My name is Jonny. I'm here in the factory project down in Silvertown and North Woolwich, and I have been workshopping a new play that I've written called Silvertown, which is part of the Docks Original Festival and commissioned by Theatre Stratford East and supported by the Arts Council. This play was originally inspired by the book Last Exit to Brooklyn, and it's a project I've been thinking about doing for about 20 years, and I wanted to do a version of the book on the stage, and I didn't feel like I would have been able to set it in 1950s Brooklyn, and getting the rights to do it was also very difficult. And so I started researching how could I do something inspired by the book, and wondering what would be a comparable time and setting, and I kind of thought of the London docks. And as I started to look deeper into this, I interviewed a member of the Gay Liberation Front called Stuart Feather, who told me about a gay pub called the Kent Arms, which he went to in 1961, I think it was. And from talking to him, I got inspired by his recollection of that pub and the area. And with the inspiration from the book and this new piece of information about this pub and this location, I began to formulate the ideas for a play, for a narrative, for ideas around character, upon which this play, Silvertown, is based as a starting point.
So my name's Rachel Wild, and I am playing Rita.
My name is David Carlisle, and I'm playing Reg. Reg is, I don't want to give too much away. All right, he's a Cockney geezer down East End, and he's married to Rita, and he's got a bit of a relationship with the queers who run the pub. He's a bit of a tough bloke.
Rita is a lovely woman. She's got 3 children and a husband. She's very suppressed. There's a lot going on. She deals with domestic violence at home, has been cut off from her friends and family over the years, doesn't get out much.
The play itself is set in 1967 in this area, and it's set in a version of the pub called the Kent Arms, not the actual, I've kept the name, but it's not a recreation of the actual pub itself. The area around here was very industrial. The docks were very busy and very active. The housing was very dense. It was a very rich, working class London community with huge influxes of people coming in and out on the boats of the docks. And within this area, there was this pocket of gay life. I don't think you really say LGBTQ life would say now, but that wasn't a phrase they had back in 1967. And the play is set in that pub a couple of days after the passing of the 1960 partial decriminalisation of homosexuality. And the gays are celebrating, and the night is interrupted by the arrival of 2 straight couples.
Hello, I'm Micah, and I play Miss Daphne in Silvertown. Miss Daphne is a fierce queen of the New York scene. She's got a really fiery personality, but under everything, she's got a big heart, but she's not afraid to read a sister Hanny.
The 2 straight couples come to the pub on this very special night, and I own a gay pub, and so I've seen what happens when you get unsuspecting straight people walk into a gay environment. And so it's basically set around what happens to archetypes, but set in a historic context, and taking those sort of narratives, kind of exploding them to a kind of unexpected conclusion, and kind of looking deeper into what may prompt people to act in a certain way. So if you've got two straight couples coming into a gay bar, you often have the woman who becomes friends with the gays, you have, you know, a woman who might kind of feel like she's not getting enough attention, you might have a man who secretly gets off with the drag queen, and the man who kind of thinks it's all right and then starts making homophobic comments. That's basically what happens. But I've gone deeper and looked into what is the actual storyline behind all these characters. And so what happens is when these characters come in, their lives are overturned. And also there's a central storyline of the landlord called Rachel, otherwise known as Raymond Spinks, and Pat, who is his boyfriend, if you like, in a way. And Rachel is planning on using the passing of the law as an excuse for Pat to move in, and Pat reacts badly to it. So without giving anything away, that is the setup.
I'm Rosie Ackerman and I play Sally. I perceived her as a married woman who worked in a factory, wasn't really getting on with her husband because of his drinking problem and their lack of intimacy. And that she was just kind of going along with it, and because obviously in those days it was very hard, like divorce wasn't really a thing, and I saw her as someone that had just kind of accepted that this was her life now. So
Miss Daphne's relationship with Sally, I feel is, it's kind of about education really, because Sally doesn't really have much, she doesn't have any idea really about like the queer life or what Miss Daphne goes through as a non-gender conforming person. And I think even though Miss Daphne knows that she doesn't really have any idea, she doesn't let her get away with anything, but it's in a very firm, loving kind of way, and she seeks to really educate Sally in the best way that she can, which I think we could all take a lesson from.
I think Sally is a feminist. I think she probably doesn't really know what feminism means, but I think if she was to look into it and met other feminists, I think she'd feel like they were her people, for sure.
I think in modern terms, in current day, I think Miss Daphne may identify as possibly non-binary. I think, you know, nowadays there's such a broad spectrum of gender identities, and I wouldn't want to cast aspersions onto how she would feel. But I personally, I think that she is male identifying, but she knows very much that she harnesses feminine energy.
The period of research began in April 2020 by virtue of being locked indoors because of the pandemic that we were all subject to. And it felt like a good time to be working on something which wasn't introspective. So I started researching. I thought, well, this is a great time for me to be looking into this period, the 1960s, the docks and all that kind of thing. And I started interviewing senior gay men who remember life in the 60s. I then went online and got in contact with someone who actually worked in the pub in 1965 and interviewed him. And then I got some funding from the Royal Docks and I began interviewing locals. I think I did about 20 kind of interviews with people from the area and older gay people, which gave me an idea of what the area was like. And then I did a lot of reading. I went to the Newham Archive and I watched Ken Loach films, read Nell Dunn plays and books, well, books, didn't write plays. I was looking at, I read a lot of Joe Alton plays. So I was looking at kind of like literature and writing and films from the time, as well as kind of archival evidence of the area, of the docks, the industry, the people, the lives, the women, the men, the gays, all that kind of stuff. And then anecdotal information from people who were alive and remembered the area of the pub and what it was like to be alive in the 60s.
My historical references when I was building the character of Miss Daphne is definitely Crystal in The Queen. She does like this huge speech and she's like, "The true beauties aren't here tonight, darling," and I really took that as a reference point. One of my other reference points was the Latinx character in The Boys in the Band, which you can watch on Netflix. And he has that Latinx New York twang. So it's like a New York twang, but with a bit of a Hispanic edge. And I really took reference from those two characters when I built her.
I grew up in Canning Town, which is just round the corner. My mum still lives there now in the house that I grew up in. I've been staying there all week while I've been rehearsing. A few things that I've learned. So a lot of the facts that are in the play about the law that was passed. God, there's loads. I just feel like I'm on the spot now and I can't think. I've learned loads about the gay community, the language, cleaning ovens. Who knew was women, right? There's so much. The Polare speaking, Nancy Wooster, which I love because I'm a Cockney, so Cockney rhyming slang. I love the history of how that come about, and I love the Polare stuff. I just feel like I've learnt so much, as well as being part of Jonny's writing process, of how he writes. Like, I'm just absolutely fascinated by it and how he can put all this information, facts, characters into his writing. Yeah, I'm just blown away by it. And then the directing process that's happened this week, I feel like I've learned so much.
So we are here in I think it's an annex of the sugar factory, and this is where we staged the first reading of the full play after a year and a half of research and writing and rewrites and all this kind of stuff. I worked on a draft of the play with the director and actors, and we performed it in front of paying audiences. And we are in as I said, I think it's the old office buildings of the sugar factory, built in the 1950s, I think. But I was really keen to have the play first read here so I could get a sense of the voices and the characters and the impressions that I was telling 200, 300 yards away from the original site of where the pub stood. Most of all that stuff's gone. The housing's gone, the pubs have gone, the factories have gone. This is like one of the few remaining buildings from the time. So it's really important to be here. And the showing was part of the Docks Original Festival, which is kind of a festival of kind of like arts and culture in the Docks. And yeah, so that's why we're in this. I think it's a beautiful building, beautiful 1950s style building. I think it's perfect for the story that I was telling.
I didn't realise there was a pub back in the 60s in the East End of London near the Docks that was known to be a gay bar. I didn't know about the jobs and the relationships that were going on down here. But I think the biggest thing I've learned is that playing a story of a straight person who has a complicated relationship with homosexuality. In my career, I've either played somebody who's positively queer or they are straight, but this one's an interesting chap, so I've learned a lot about that story. I mean, also I've learned about costume, things you can wear in the 60s as well, which are pretty fab.
Now I've done one full draft, and I'll be talking with Theatre Royal Stratford East as to what's needed to move it forwards. Fingers crossed it's going to a full commission and should be performed in the main space of Theatre Royal Stratford East in 2023 at the beginning, because they've got a backlog of shows that need to be done. But that's where it's going next. So after this event, the project goes dormant for a little bit and sits for a while. But it's been an amazing experience. I've been very lucky, very grateful. I've been, the pandemic was a great opportunity for me to do this. Getting to know the area, getting to know the different stories, putting my spin, making up a story based on all these pieces of inspiration. Yeah, a rewrite, then it'll sit and hopefully come to life in the beautiful theatre down at Theatre Royal Stratford East.
You still going on about that bird fell down that hole?